More and more today, we're hearing these words like holistic or behavior. But what do those things even mean? What do they mean in the context of health and fitness? Why would we even care about those? Do you see these dark circles under these eyes? You see the gray in this beard? You see this travel bandana here? I'm here to tell you I've been to the top of the mountain, and I want to take you on a journey. I want to take you on a journey of why these things are important and why it could potentially change the way that you interact with yourself and with clients as well. So pack your knapsack, grab your walking stick, say goodbye to the Shire, and let's go. I'm Spencer Nix. On this channel, we discuss the art of radical health and athlete design. And what do we mean by that? Radical health means that we want everything. Radical means all together. It also is a knockback to the origins or the roots of what it is to be healthy. And when we say athlete design, it means that there's more that goes into this versus just sets and reps. We're looking at how everything works together. And so I believe one of the biggest frustrations that coaches have is that they're not thinking about this like a design. They're thinking about it as a singular answer to a simple problem. And what I want to prove to you is that we need to change the way that we go about training people from focusing on the outcome, say I want to get stronger, I want to lose weight, to actually designing for the behavior. So before we get off on this journey, let's make sure that we understand these two words put together, behavior design. This hasn't been around for too terribly long. This started in the 80s. It's made popular in recent times by a guy named BJ Fogg out of Stanford. But when we say design, really what we're talking about is how we can create this environment that shapes the decisions that we make. When we talk about behavioral design, it's insinuating that there's more to this than one singular decision. The problem of I want to lose weight is actually a complex problem when you zoom out and you look at all of the sequences of decisions that have to be made in order for that to happen. Now, if you're a coach, I know what might be going through your head. What might be going through your head is, well, it wasn't that hard for me to get stronger, or it wasn't that hard for me to lose weight. And I want to remind you that your whole life revolves around fitness. Everything you do, from the way you dress, your friends, what you eat, what you think about, revolves around this thing. I'd even go so far as to say that working out is your hobby. So for you, it may have been a more simple decision. You may have just said, well, I want to train for this, and you just did it. But for the rest of us mere mortals, that's not how this works. And so for anyone who has had success, for anyone that says it's simple, I can prove to you that they've gone through exactly this process. It was probably just by accident. Now, sadly, what I'm about to tell you is not my original thought. I would like for you to think that it is. I would like for you to think that I'm this really smart guy that just came up with all of this. But the truth is that it's a remix of several giants in the field of behavioral economics and design. I'm talking guys like Stephen Wendell, BJ Fogg, Daniel Kahneman, may he rest in peace, and others, because there's a lot of research in this field. My hope is that we can take this research and actually make it practical. So even though this is whittling down a lot of different ideas, my hope is that you would hear it and say, well, I can totally do that, versus being bogged down by the details and these more or less like theoretical concepts. For us, we're going to truncate this into 3 easy steps. The 3 easy steps of behavior design are this. Number 1, we want to understand the world of the client. Number 2, we want to start to think through what it would be like to change all of the current associations that they have, or as many as we have control over. And then last, but certainly not least, we want to start to get our hands dirty with as many prototypes and iterations of this design as is necessary to produce change. Dare I say, transformation. And at the very end, I'll describe to you exactly what I mean by that. So number 1 is understanding the world of the client. Obviously, this is going to be a conversation or a series of conversations that you'll have to have. So we're assuming that there is some consultative aspect of what you do as a coach. If there's not, this doesn't have to be some formal addressing. This could just be going to coffee at some point. But it is absolutely necessary, because without this, you don't really know who you're dealing with, and you don't know how to make these associations, which is the next step. So how do you go about this? Well, in my younger years, I would try to really sidestep some direct questions and, just get them talking and see if I could more or less like infer some assumptions. But now I just go out and ask the questions. I say, hey, what do you want? It's a good question. What do you want out of this? What's the problem? The way that I think about this now is I'm trying to figure out what the elevator pitch is for the movie that is their life. And you can make that sentence look like this: by helping this person start or stop doing this action, we will cause this outcome. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, this is the hero's journey. So in one succinct sentence, I want to understand, what is the journey that we're going on here? Who are you? What do you want? What do you think we need to do? And why is it important to you? If that's all we get, I think that's a wonderful start. But if you can, there's a little bit more that you'd hope to pull out in the context of those answers to make the story even more rich. What's stopping them from doing that? That's a big question to figure out the other players in this actor's, so to speak, life that make this easier or harder for them to assume these new behaviors and therefore have a different outcome in their health. Maybe it's not a person, but maybe there's things that are challenging them. This could be situations in their life that they have to navigate. This could be a certain personality type. This could even be a certain mindset, or the words and the stories that continue to percolate in our head that make us think that a certain thing is true. Now, that may take lots of conversations, but I'm guessing that if you answer pretty straightforward with these questions, you can start to formulate more or less a script. And so instead of just speaking in vague terms, let's go ahead and use an example. Let's say that we have a client that comes across your doorstep and you guys sit down. Let's call him Smitty. I don't know anybody named Smitty, but I wish that I did. Smitty, let's say, is in his late 40s. He's 6'4". He's a big guy. He's 50 pounds overweight, and he's been sedentary for the last 8, 9, 10 years. As soon as he got married and as soon as he started having kids. He's also a year into sobriety. He really wants to take this last year of his life where he was only stopping things that weren't good for him, and he tells you that he wants to start doing things that he enjoys and start doing things that are good for him. He works with his father-in-law. He has to travel some for work. Recognize almost instantly that he's this friendly and personable guy that probably can make friends very easily. He has lots of friends, he tells you, but they don't really understand the world of sobriety. He has 2 adolescent kids, but he describes to you that his wife is really burnt out from trying to keep him sober this last year. And so even though she isn't in opposition of him getting healthy, really her concern is that he doesn't continue to do dumb stuff for the rest of their marriage. So I hope that paints a picture, and we got to start there, because these things that I'm about to say, they won't make sense unless we can try to use some illustrative context. Now that's 101, just getting an idea of who this person is and what the context is. But let's say that we wanted to take this to a grad school level. Are you ready? We want to understand what we wish that he could be, and we want to understand, why does this matter? Back to the concept of story. What are the stakes here? Why do we even have any inclination to change? I think most of the time people come to you, they're coming because they want to remove pain from their life. But there is a time and a place for motivation. There is a time and a place for inspiration. And that's what we're talking about right now. I think it's an elective course to go down this road, but I think that if you do, you can start to create even more associations that will be really, really positive for them. I think it's really crucial to understand all the things that your client likes and all the things that they would be really curious to explore. Curiosity is an important component of this. If it's all just flossing and brushing your teeth, it's going to be a hard sell. But if we can start to wrap in something that they've always wanted to investigate, always wanted to explore, if they can start to conjure up images of the person that they want to be and the things that they would want to let that represent, you're off to a much better place in creating some traction in this new story that you're more or less like trying to develop with your client. So in answer to that question with Smitty, let's say that, Smitty 1.0 was a lineman in college. He played collegiate football. Smitty 2.0 got married, had kids, became an alcoholic, and so you're now in Smitty 3.0. 3.0 is this guy that wants to reinvent himself as a great father. He talks a lot about his kids. He talks about wanting to represent what it would look like to live a great, adventurous life, one that's healthy, one that includes lots of things where he's leading his kids down this path of really good experiences. And so you're going to hang on to that, and you're going to come back to that concept, because it's not just about working out on a regular basis or losing the 50 pounds. So look, as I've said already, that could be lots of time spent one-on-one. That could be more than one conversation. But now that you have a download of information, the next step isn't to do anything, but it's to brainstorm. This is the brainstorm more or less on your own, thinking about this person in the context of this story. Now, number 2 is what we call changing associations. Changing associations is like a big rebrand for this person. That's the best analogy that I can give you. What is a rebrand? A rebrand is saying, hey, we were once really attached to these certain things, and when people thought of us, they thought of these things. Now that we are changing what that means, we want to create new pairings and new associations. These are the things that we say that we want to be about, and so these are the behaviors that we want to be associated with. That's what this whole step is. Now, the low-hanging fruit is obviously things like exercise and nutrition. For exercise, it would make a lot of sense that the ways that they would train would be associated with this person that they want to be. If they want to lose weight, you better communicate and educate them that the things that they're going to do are going to be directly associated with that thing that they want. That conversation may go like this. Hey, Smitty, I know that in college you did a lot of power cleaning, but since we really want to increase the amount of energy that we have, because we want to be able to play with our kids as much as we possibly can, we're going to put a lot of focus and energy into making sure that your lungs work, making sure that you train in a way that gives you more of that. Does that sound good? They'll probably say yeah. From a nutrition standpoint, you want to make this that when they eat, they don't feel like they're getting ripped off, but at the same time, they find it directing them towards that person that they want to be, and that it doesn't suck. Smitty, you love protein. That's great. Me too. We're going to make sure that every time you eat a delicious amount of protein in whatever form that you want. When you eat that protein, you'll know that you're preserving muscle, but you're not preserving excess body fat. Does that sound like a plan? Therefore, every time he eats food and he eats that, he's going to associate, hey, this is totally on brand with that guy that wants to be doing these things. Now that's basic, and we can get into other really basic protocols, but hopefully you get the point. Now, 201 course would be some not so obvious areas to focus on, some not so obvious associations. Probably one of the biggest ones is the environment. Most people don't think that exercise is fun. And when you deconstruct that, you would probably agree that there isn't really anything inherently hedonistic about sweating or making your muscles sore. We have created new associations around those things because we know it does something so good for us. Furthermore, the reason that group fitness is so popular is because we get together with people that also have that in common with us, and it reinforces that it's not weird, but it's actually cool. One of the best things that you could do to hedge your bet that Smitty will be successful is to put him in a social environment with other weirdos that are also trying to do the same thing that he is. Now, if you have a private training practice and all it is one-on-one coaching, then you'll need to model that behavior with him. I think it's a really valuable aspect to be doing stuff with your client outside of the gym, being active with them, because all you're trying to do is show them like, hey, this stuff can be really fun and it can be really cool. This is going to sound like a curveball out of left field, but getting as much detail about the person that he wants to become is important because you want them to start to do all of the things that they possibly can to be that person. One of the strongest things that they can do is to start to dress and look like the person that they want to become. Even though they're still overweight, have Smitty go get workout clothes that he really loves to wear. Have him get a pair of shoes that when he puts them on, it's like Mr. Rogers going from the work to his living room. Be like, hey, it's game on. Don't wait until they're skinny to do those things. Start to create as many associations from an environmental standpoint that when they do this, they start to feel good. They start to say, hey, I am this person when I'm doing these things. And then the last thing that I'll say from a 201 standpoint is that you want to make sure that there's as many things associated with fun and good that come from working out. From a logistical standpoint, I would start to brainstorm with what's the best time that Smitty could exercise? What could we pair that with that starts to be a really good thing? If he works out in the morning, what's something that he really looks forward to that he could do right before he works out? What's something that he really looks forward to that he could do right after he works out? For example, if we're not working out in the morning, we're probably sleeping in. But if we wake up to work out and we realize that we really enjoy some quiet time, man, we pencil that in before we exercise. Or hell, we don't even think about exercise as having to go to a gym, but the activity that we love to do, such as listening to a podcast, is associated with walking with a weighted vest, or we hop on our bike, or man, we want to have more energy when we come home for the kids, so we know that we're going to go on a little bike ride from the office to the house, so when I show up, I'm sweaty and I'm ready to continue that sweat playing with my kids, so on and so forth. Now, the grad school level of these created associations is to try to continually enhance the workout by customizing. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we could do is to say, oh, well, Smitty, you were a football player in college, so let's do some back squats. Or, man, you got 50 pounds to lose, let's make the workouts really intense. And so all around the world, the people that are failing at exercise are the ones that are starting too hard because they think this is a one-time, short-term experiment that they're doing, and they inevitably create too many changes that they're trying to make, or the changes are too hard that they're trying to be consistent with. Make the workouts fun. Forget this high intensity stuff. Forget this stuff that looks like what everybody else is doing. Figure out a way that every single day, this guy that says he wants to be healthy can do something that reinforces that right now he is healthy. Make that look like whatever it needs to look like. Now, another grad level area is, instead of reinforcing all of these positive triggers, as BJ Fogg would talk about, we also want to decrease the triggers that would encourage behavior that's in opposition of this rebrand of who this person is. Now, there's some things that you can't really control. For example, Smitty travels for work. We can't completely eliminate that, but I can guarantee that there's some triggers that aren't great for him as he travels. We want to think through, how can we eliminate as many negative ones as possible? Isolation is probably one. Where he stays. What's the first thing he does when he gets off the airplane? How long is he staying there? These are things that we can think through and also try to determine maybe not what we can add to it, but what can we eliminate to make the decisions that he has to go through not quite as complex. Last thing, before we jump to the third bullet point, is that there's great merit in trying to amplify motivation by creating these short-term experiences that they can more or less myopically focus on. What does that mean? Well, in the context of Smitty, he's got kids that he really wants to inspire. So one of the things that we could do is actually plan a trip that has an adventure component that he's got to get his ass in shape for. Now, we don't want to do anything that's counterproductive to him being consistently healthy for the rest of his life, but by creating some defined end date that he's training for, something that is the epitome of who he wants to be, this can be something that really jumpstarts those associations and catapults him into embodying who this person is. It's the reason why doing things like a 5K, hiking rim to rim, going and doing these other sports can be so valuable. It's not because we're saying that we're going to do that for the rest of our life, but because it can enhance the intrinsic, and I would say even the extrinsic motivation to get them into this world a lot faster than maybe without it. Now, that's all brainstorming. What we just talked about, that's all you with a whiteboard or a moleskin, just kind of mapping out all the stuff that you know about him and thinking through all the ways, right? That was an exhaustive exploration of all the things that you can do. Now, when we get to actually designing, we want to make this as simple as possible. We want to pick one thing that we can start to hang our hat on and be really, really consistent with. And I'll explain why. If you're trying to lose weight as fast as possible and you don't care about gaining it back again, then you will make the behavior design as aggressive as you can. I want to tell you that when most people come to you and they say that they want this, or they say that they don't want to keep doing something, they're not looking for that. They are looking for something that they can sustain for the rest of their life. If that's true, and I believe that it is, then you want to make sure that what you design is something that seemingly feels totally inadequate. That when you present this first design to them, they say, "Is that it?" And you say, "Yeah, man, that's it." And they'll say, "Well, how often do you want to do this?" And it's like, well, because it's so easy, I want you to do it every day. I want you to do it multiple times a day. Every time you see this, I want you to say, yeah, that's nothing. I can do that in my sleep. And so that's where we'll start with this last concept of prototyping and iteration. It probably makes sense to pick one area. So let's say that we're going to pick working out. And that's the one area that we'll focus on. I found that it helps to really map out the very basic logistics of this. Smitty gets up. He has to first plan when he's going to wake up so he doesn't miss the workout time. He's got to have his clothes prepared. He's got to remember that this is how his day is going to start. He has to coordinate what's going to happen around the rest of the aspects of his life that he has to also be responsible for. He has to actually wake up. He has to put these clothes on. He has to drive to the gym. And then the behavior starts. All that stuff is important because in every potential logistics, there's a constraint. There's something there that could possibly go wrong. And so with that, you want to make it really easy. And so for each of those decisions, you want to try to think through how could we make this where it's just a no-brainer for him. And so in the context of these logistics, I think probably one of the best things you could do is say, hey, Smitty, every night before you go to bed, I want you to set the clock for 10 minutes. And for that 10-minute time frame, I want you to lay out your clothes. I want you to look at your schedule. I want you to set your alarm and put the alarm across the room so you know you got to get out of bed. Those things don't take a lot of time. James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, talks about this 1% change that we want to dedicate to ourselves. And when you do the math, 1% of your day is 14 minutes and 24 seconds. And so for all the stuff that we're whittling down to like one behavior design, man, make sure it's something they can do quick. It's probably going to have to be premeditated. So when they actually get to that moment, there's not a lot of decisions that they have to make. Now, that's one example. There's a million examples, but it's been my experience that most of the time you'll start and it won't go flawlessly. That means you'll start with something and you'll be unaware of one particular aspect, or you'll do something and it won't work exactly like you thought that it would. Be ready for that. Give them a heads up that that's exactly how this is going to go. One of the guys I mentioned, Daniel Kahneman, talks about something called prospect therapy, talks about a myopic loss aversion. And what that means is that people would rather not do anything and be stuck with exactly where they're at than to do something and fail at it. If that's true, and it absolutely is, you need to get out in front of that. You need to tell them, hey, look, I understand the context of who you are and what you're trying to do, and I've thought through lots of ways that we could try to rebrand you. Thought of lots of new and cool ways that we can make this sustainable in the long haul. However, despite all of that, and I'm good at what I do, there's no way that we can create a design in its first iteration that's flawless. So here's what I want to promise you, Smitty. If this doesn't go exactly like it should, if you make more than one tactical mistake, if we miss more than one workout, it doesn't mean that there's a motivation issue. It means there's a design flaw. It means there's something that you and I need to collaborate with, and we need to make it easier. We need to reduce a decision. We need to change the logistics of how we're going about this. And if you can communicate that to them, then when it happens, they won't be surprised by it. And I'm here to tell you that coaching is not nailing it the first time, but it's being unapologetically enthusiastic about these failures, because it's the only path towards iterating into a design that actually does work. And that's a drastically different way of thinking about coaching than being this omnipotent expert that says, well, you'll just do 5x5 back squat, and then the person just does it. Is this more complex? Yeah, but is it more realistic? I think that it is. Now, at the tail end of this, how do you know that someone has actually changed? How do you know that someone has transformed? Well, if you go through this and they don't do it, you know that learning has not occurred. Learning has occurred when they repeatedly do the new behavior. And if you look at the trans-theoretical model of change by Prochaska, only when they can repeatedly show that action have they actually moved into this new iteration of who they are. And so I think something that they can repeatedly do over and over again is a great indication that they're on the path to change. In close, all of design is really for one essential purpose. It's creating this optimal world now versus later. Most people come to the gym and they say a sentence that starts like this: I will be happy when ... I will only be happy once I lose this weight. I will only be happy once I'm able to achieve this thing. The most meta part of your job is to gently and secretly get them satisfied with the now. So it's not happy when, it's happy now. And I believe the job of a holistic health coach is to start to think through all of these potential areas of design, whittle it down to something very simple, and create these sequential and reoccurring things that happen that your client can feel like they are that new person right now. They have rebranded and it's happening right now. If you can do that, and if you can get good at this, I think that you can actually transform people. I really believe that. Thanks for listening, and good luck out there on the dusty trail.